But to another telling development today, that speech of Noel Pearson to the National Press Club. And I have to say, Noel, if that vindictive and sometimes nonsensical speech is your best argument for the voice, dear God. Not that journalists at the club seem to mind that this Cape York Indigenous leader was either settling petty scores or often making no sense at all.
Empathy is so important, but only love can move us now. Not the love of family. Unlike other campaigns, we don't have the love of family to join our hearts with our heads.
What does any of that even mean? But this was a very pro-voice crowd, very forgiving, and not one journalist there asked Pearson the key question. Noel, what happened to the $550 million? You see, Noel Pearson is Mr. Voice. He helped draft the Uluru Statement demanding the Voice, was on a government committee which designed the Voice, and is now campaigning for the Voice. And as he said in his speech, the big argument for this Voice, this Aboriginal-only advisory parliament, cemented forever in our constitution, the biggest argument is that it would force politicians to listen to Aborigines before making any decisions affecting them.
I've learned the hard way. Over a lifetime of community work, day after day, year after year, decade after decade, that listening makes it possible.
But hang on there. Now, we already actually do have so many voices, or bodies rather, advising the government. We've got the Coalition of Peaks, for instance, more than 30 big land councils, etc. Governments are listening now. And the sad fact here is that the Aboriginal leader that I know has been listened to more closely by our political leaders is Noel Pearson himself. It is. Because you just look at the money they've showered on Pearson's Cape York Partnership, which he set up to help just 3,700 Aborigines in the northern tip of Queensland, and money also for other Pearson pet projects. Now, Pearson's local federal member, Warren Anch, is a Liberal MP. He once counted it all up.
Since 2005, Noel's accumulated something like $550 million of Australian taxpayers' money, and that's only what I can find, and subsidies for his entities and his policy initiatives. They've received hundreds of millions of dollars over many decades for his pet projects, and for what? Many of these remote communities that Noel has used as policy experiments remain dysfunctional.
That's absolutely true. You take Arakan, that's the biggest town in Pearson's Cape York Partnership. It's prone to violence and it's poor. Of the people there, about 90% Aboriginal, nearly 1/3 dropped out of school before year 10. Not one person owns their own home, and just 1/3 of them, including the whites, are in the workforce. And these are census figures. I could go on. So, Noel, what happened to the money? Politicians listen to you, just like you now demand they listen to your voice. But what good did that do? Now, Pearson, as it turns out, doesn't seem to like that question being asked. And in his speech today, he got even with Warren Anch. He made Anch, his local member, he didn't name him, just said my local member, the scapegoat in his only example of how the voice would supposedly make things better.
Rheumatic heart disease is a scourge, a disease largely eradicated in the rest of the world, but allowed to fester in the paradise of Cape York. Yet when I searched Hansard, I found the local federal member of Parliament for Cape York and the Torres Strait, ensconced in his seat for 26 years, never found time to mention rheumatic heart disease in our nation's chamber of democracy even once. This is a problem only a voice can overcome. It is a disease of the unlistened to. I
wonder how many journalists there saw through that or bothered to check. Because Ancient Fact early last year announced that the Morrison government put out a press release, was giving extra money to the National Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation to fight rheumatic heart disease. And where? In far north Queensland. And what's more, Liberal leader Peter Dutton back in 2014, when he was the health minister in the Abbott government, he was signing deals with states on a rheumatic fever strategy for Aboriginal Australians. So it doesn't sound to me like this is a disease of the unheard that only a voice can overcome, as Pearson was trying to tell you. And I got to ask, while these Liberal MPs were getting on with tackling this disease, where was Pearson? Because I rang Warren Entsch about this today, and he said, well, I've been in the Parliament since 1996, and not once has either Pearson or any of his entities approached me personally or in writing to raise this as an issue with me. So thank you, Noel, for your newfound interest in this issue of rheumatic heart disease. So, I have to say, if this was Pearson's best and only example today of a problem he said only the voice could fix so the Aborigines would get heard, well, seriously, the second you check it, it's gone. And if that really is the best argument Noel Pearson has for the voice, Noel, let me ask you again. What good did you do with that $550 million? And why should we trust you to have the answers now?